looking at those prices, like, holy moly, this is like at least double other people in Chinatown were doing. I was like, are people really going to book those prices? And yeah, they it ended up happening. So it generated even more money. So even just from one property itself, like one of us actually could have left their job.
This is episode number 12 of Short-Term Rental Success Stories. Welcome back to Short-Term Rental Success Stories. I'm your host, Julian Sage. This is a show where I talk to hosts about their journeys in starting and growing their short-term rental business. My goal is that you'll be able to walk away with practical information that'll help you become a better host and learn how to scale your business. Since we are a new show, reviews would greatly help us grow, so please go on over to iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, Google Play, YouTube, Facebook, or wherever you're actively listening, and please leave us an honest review, and we'll give your review or rental a shout out in the next episode. Today I had the honor of speaking with MiLo Chan. MiLo and his wife Chandra were able to quit their full-time jobs after stumbling upon Airbnb and realizing how well it was in their market. MiLo and Chandra decided to move into their parents' basement temporarily to rent out their home, and during this time they were able to save enough money to purchase another property. From there, they've been able to scale up to rental arbitraging 3 properties while owning 2 and also giving them the freedom to quit their jobs and focus on their vacation rental business. In this episode, MiLo shares his journey in becoming a full-time host, how he uses dynamic pricing, and his strategy to succeeding in a market that undervalues their properties. If you haven't done so already, go on over to our Facebook group, Short-Term Rental Success Secrets, to talk with MiLo and other successful hosts. If you like my show notes for this episode, go to shorttermsage.com/EP12. Or if you'd like my show notes sent directly to your inbox every week, then go to shorttermsage.com/show notes. So if you've been following this podcast for the past few months, you've probably known that we haven't listed our unit during these past few episodes because of some extenuating circumstances, like dealing with the contractor, and then we're waiting for my wife to be able to finish the mural back piece. And I'm very happy to say that we are officially Airbnb hosts. So your favorite host just got a little bit more hostier. So we listed our property on the evening of May 22nd, and by the following morning, we had a weekend booking, and then during that weekend booking, we had a booking that was immediately following, like on that Tuesday, and then that booking ends on a Thursday, and then we have another person coming in from Thursday to Sunday, and then after that, we have another month-long booking. So, I mean, it's just back to back to back immediately. And we were not expecting that. It's nice being able to implement some of the stuff that all these hosts have been sharing. Like I said, this podcast is also kind of my success story because I want to share my progress of how the listing is going and what we're doing. I'll probably make another episode talking about some of the tools that we're using to kind of automate the business and kind of the complications that I've and things that we've kind of discovered while doing this. Because I do work full time. I'm active duty Coast Guard, so that does take up a good portion of time. And I've also got the podcast and some other stuff that's going on. So I really wanted to be able to make this as automated and as easy as possible, relieving the burden, but still keeping that quality for our guests. So some exciting stuff. I just wanted to share that with you all, that we are now official hosts, and we're just excited to start sharing this journey of our success story and how this will kind of pan out. With all that being said, on to this week's conversation. Welcome back, host. Today I have the special honor of speaking with MiLo Chan. MiLo, would you please let the audience know a little bit more about who you are and what inspired you to get into short-term rentals?
So my name is MiLo, and my wife and I started Airbnb about 2 years ago, June of 17, I believe. And we just have 5 properties right now, and we got started because randomly one of our friends one night kind of gave us a call because she emergency situation, she needed a place to live, and so she stayed with us essentially for a couple months while she was transitioning through her life, and it seemed like it was going to be like a long-term deal for the most part, and we were fine with it. And we initially, we didn't actually expect her to pay anything, and so she ended up wanting to look for a place to stay and live, and we just offered up our place pretty much for free. But if she wanted to pay, she was, hey, just if you wanted to do something, you can just pay this much, and then it's like barely anything compared to what she was looking at. So in our minds, it was like, oh wow, that's actually like an extra few $100 every month, and that covers like just some like our utilities and minor expenses and stuff like that. Like that's kind of nice. And but then like as quickly as she came, she actually had to leave too. And so we were thinking like, oh man, it's like it would have been nice to every month to have like a little bit of money coming in like that. Especially because we're in a process during that time of kind of figuring out other things to do and other ways to make money as well. And I never really heard too much about Airbnb then or short-term rentals, but I knew I wanted to get into real estate. I was watching kind of tons of things and researching tons of things about real estate. And all of a sudden I came across a video of this guy whom eventually became pretty much my mentor in this realm. And then I started learning about what Airbnb is and like how he was living. He was making a lot of money. He still actually does make a lot, but he's making even more money now. So I was like, okay, that seems pretty interesting. So we talked about it, and we ended up just figuring out, like, hey, let's do this. So we turned our original home, which was a 3-bed, 1.5 bath condo, into an Airbnb, and we spent like pretty much the month prior to when we first launched, like we were just researching like day and nights, constantly about everything, and then yeah, we ended up having to move into my parents' basement to do it, and pretty much shift our lives over there and to see how that would work. And that started mid-June of 2017, and by October of that same year, it was going so well that we ended up getting another place for it, and yeah, that was pretty much it. The short story.
Wow, I love that that entrepreneurial pursuit that you and your wife have been taking together. You know, I think that's so cool that, you know, it's always interesting to hear how people start, because everybody's got kind of like a different reason. And, you know, it's funny because a lot of people don't get into this initially with the intent to like make a lot of money. Like some people, they just start because it's like, hey, I want to help someone out. And then they're like, oh, wait, I can actually start making some money off of this. And then you just took that idea and you ran with it. You said, we're moving out, you know, you tell your wife we're moving back to let's move back to our parents. Let's rent out our place. And it did so well that you were actually able to purchase another property. And now you've actually scaled this up. Before, when we were talking, you said that you have 5 properties. Now you own 2 and you're performing rental arbitrage on 3. And you're actually transitioning from your full-time jobs to actually just doing Airbnb full-time. Do you mind telling a little bit more about like how that process is with transitioning from your job to now being able to just do Airbnb full-time?
Yeah. So we didn't imagine how much money that Airbnb generated. And so, like when we first started, I kind of had an idea of our comps, and most of the people in our area were situated in Chinatown. So a lot of the operators here in Chinatown, the owners, they priced a certain way, they did stuff a certain way, which was kind of, in my opinion, a little bit low standard sort of things. And so things were priced really, really low. But even at the prices that they were listing, I was kind of doing like some of my calculations on that. I was like, hey, well, that's actually really good. Like I see like their calendars like pretty fully booked out. If they're getting booked at these prices, then I'm like, wow, that's really amazing, because it's essentially all the benefits of doing real estate, but actually getting the awesome cash flow that you want from it. And then I immediately, like, with things that people talk about with dynamic pricing and all the other stuff that ties into the business, I just went full force into dynamic pricing, and I had a program that helped me do that, which is beyond pricing at first. And looking at those prices, like, holy moly, this is like at least double the amount that my other people in Chinatown were doing. I was like, are people really going to book those prices? And yeah, it ended up happening. So it generated even more money. So even just from one property itself, I could have, like, one of us actually could have left their job, and pretty much done this full time, which was amazing. Which is why, like, our plan was to only stay at my parents' basement for a few months, like, just kind of through the wintertime, to the slow season, to kind of get a general sense of how that would go. And then once that passed, like, we would find a place to live, and then continue on with the business. And yeah, so we ended up much sooner than that. My parents, whom themselves are longtime business and entrepreneurs, they saw, like, oh, how amazing that the business was, and so they're like, okay, well, let's this is actually really cool, and let's start looking for other places and start, like, figuring how to expand this as well.
So this is a family business now. The what you're
Well,
doing?
like, with a lot of times with so our families, it's everything. Everyone's always pretty close knit. So I mean, they want to help us as much as they can. So and they did help us quite a bit with some investing in us and stuff like that. But yeah, like, my father especially, he's always interested in learning about other businesses and things like that too. So he's pretty much been doing the same business for the better part of 30 years and some. And so when we started doing this, it was kind of like, oh, it was kind of nice for him, because he was kind of excited to do something a little bit different, like, as in, like, just helping out whenever he can, and learning about how it works and stuff like that as well. And so yeah, it's kind of in a sense that it is still kind of a family affair with us.
And do you mind sharing how much that you were making off this first property that you're saying that you could have left one of your guys' full-time jobs?
Yeah. So we ended up pretty much for the first. It was pretty much 5 months, and we ended up doing about 24,000 in revenue. But that first half year, we also were gone for a lot of, I think, for at least like a quarter of that time, or a quarter or a third of the time. And at the time, we didn't have self-check-in. We checked in people ourselves, and actually we still do it for this specific property because of its location. But so when we went on holiday or weren't in town for any reason, we couldn't operate. So when we were gone for quite a bit of time during that first half year, we blocked off those dates. So we realized that in the time that we did and the prices that we could have gotten after when we were analyzing it, like, we probably could have gotten like maybe 30 or 40, like just double that in half a year, just from the first one. And then now the first, like, it's by itself when we're running it now, being a little bit more efficient, it's probably generating about I think at minimum 60 and maybe getting close to 70.
60, and this is after cleaning fees, after any
No, this
mortgage
is
or
revenue.
rent.
So I think in profit, this one probably more like $50,000 in profit, probably.
And this is from a 3-bedroom,
1.5.
three bedroom, 1.5.
Yeah,
Wow.
not bad. And so actually, it's I should probably figure that out. But I haven't recently. I haven't really looked at like super detail about all those numbers and how they're doing. But on average, we're pretty much actually, you know what? I can look it up right here and see what we are doing for the numbers because it's a little bit more detailed now. Yeah, for the entire course of, let's say, I can go back to the start of this year, so January. Yeah, so since January this year, we've only been at 55% on average for all of our properties.
The occupancy rate.
Yeah, and at the moment, our nightly average is throughout the entire year so far, so including January, is 229. But pretty much once we get into March, pretty much March and April, our average night is pretty much like closer to around $300 a night, and that's pretty much the low nightly average minimum.
300 is the low nightly average minimum.
Yeah, for us at the moment. And then it only starts getting higher and higher a little bit. And then, so yeah, that's like I originally started out thinking our average is probably going to be around $175 a night, and so this is pretty much double that almost.
You base that off of the competition in the area?
Yeah, based up because a lot of the people in our area actually just suck. So thank goodness for that. Wow. So I'm in a really great area, and my competition doesn't really know what they're doing too. So it's great.
I want to go back because you said that you started using Beyond Pricing, and that when they were doing the dynamic pricing for you, just automatically, that it was double what the competition was.
Yeah, for some days it was pretty much double because I was getting so worried sometimes about like whether or not like people are going to book it because it's so high. I didn't imagine, because like the first time I started seeing because a lot of the competition they didn't even have dynamic pricing at all. I think they just priced it out like, oh, it's 150 like straight up, and then the weekends maybe like a little bit more, and then for events that they would manually change it. And that's kind of what I thought it was going to be. And then I learned about dynamic pricing before we actually started. And then once it hit, like, and then they showed me like the price ranges, and I saw like prices of like $300 and stuff like per night. I was like, holy moly, that's so expensive. It's like, are people going to really book it? So I ended up, we were really cautious and timid when we first started. So I made adjustments to a lot of the prices, all the prices, like even just regular weekends. I was like $300. No, I'm going to bring it back down to like maybe 225 or like $200 and stuff like that. And then I got booked and stuff like that. But then the following full year, January 2018, I decided just to not make any changes at all for the most part, except for like adjustments to bookings and things like that, orphan nights and things of that nature, and just let the program do what it does. And yeah, so I was like, that's when I learned that like people were actually booking our places at these prices, and I was like, okay, wow, awesome. Let's see how far I can push it then, and slowly start raising all our prices. And now I think we've gotten to a point where I think I know like where like the threshold of how high I can pretty much go with my prices.
I think that is just super interesting. I'd love to know more about this because there's this concept in business where it's like you know your worth. If you think that you're worth $100 a night, then you're going to be collecting people that are, look at you as being $100 a night. But
Mhm.
you just said, hey, uh, where we know that we can offer something better than our competition, and even though that these prices are a little bit crazy comparatively, you said this is what we're going to be worth, and now you're trusting this dynamic pricing model, and you're doing really well. How was it? How have you been able to work around, like, has the price increase being like double of what your competition is affected affected anything? Like, are you finding that the price being higher is actually more profitable for you than if you lower it and your occupancy rate increases?
Um, I think so. One of the things that is really lucky about us is that because we're right next to a convention center, um, March through almost like through November and even December, we are extremely fully booked. Like we almost don't even have to try, and people will book us. Case in point, like when we started getting new listings, we started creating them, like especially how ordinances here in Chicago are. Like sometimes we would have to just create an empty listing just so that we can register a unit prior before anyone else can register. So sometimes we would have a listing that literally has nothing. It has one photo of like the real estate photo. Like so, it could be just like the building that we're in, or like an empty kitchen, just as a filler. We don't even care. And then even in the description, we would have coming soon and nothing, and literally nothing else. And one of the craziest things is one time we were on holiday and we had this pretty much this setup, and we were getting bookings with no information, and we were getting messages like, "Oh, I'm looking forward to staying with you guys, and when you guys get photos, let us know." And like, it almost seemed like they just didn't even care that we didn't have anything there. They just saw that, like, okay, this is gonna be a 3-room, 1.5 bath place, and let's stay there. So we're in an area where it's extremely high demand for tons and tons of business travelers. So we almost don't even have to try as very, very hard, and then we get like really high occupancy rates. So I'm very lucky on that. But I would say um, sometimes for our preference, because we do self check in, and we don't check in our guests except for one property for the most part. That we don't really mind having really, really high occupancy rates, since I know sometimes we get a little bit burned out because maybe they do all the work and things like that. But we wanted to early on, we wanted to make sure everything was as efficient as possible while not losing kind of like the personal touches that we ended up doing. But yeah, I don't think I think when we were starting to push these prices up more and more, we were still keeping at like really pretty much at in the high months, like at least 85%, which was really good. Um, and yeah, that was pretty much it. So I don't even know yet about like lowering my price. Like of course I lowered to for like the odd dates that I wanted to just get booked, but we don't do one night bookings for the most part, unless they're of like a specific day, and also like a time period, like time frame of how close it is to now, and just to avoid parties and things like that. And there's a lot of other safeguards that we do to avoid parties, and and because I think we don't do one night bookings, our occupancy isn't as high as some of our competition, but it's okay. Honestly, we do so much in revenue that like it's worth it's worth our peace of mind of not doing one nights to pretty much be 100%.
Now, is the competition, or not is the other people in that are hosting, are they pricing? Have they kind of caught on and like are starting to price higher now too?
Yeah, most of them have. In fact, there have been there's actually someone who is copying our listings almost verbatim. And like literally, like, and in fact, that's kind of funny because that's essentially what I did with my mentor's listings, and he had listings, most of his listings in New York, and that's what I did. I just like copy and pasted, and so like sometimes I'm looking at what these other guys do, and like I'm reading their wording. I'm like, this is exactly what I wrote. And yeah, a lot of them, their listings are there's a couple of them that they the listings are much better. Their photos are actually not like old school camera, like mobile camera photos, and yeah, some of them like it's kind of like mind boggling how bad they do things, but I mean they still get booked, which is crazy. But like you'll have like just the weirdest stuff that they have in there, and but yeah, a lot of them are starting to catch on. Most of them, I think, are doing dynamic pricing now. I think maybe half of them, more than half of them, now are. And some of them are even actually priced higher than me, which is fine. But yeah, it's still not too many. Like in general, our area, especially in Chinatown, it's very, very difficult for people to come in and do this. So it's, and then a lot of times people don't really own property in Chinatown that you will be able to do something like this. So there's not too many whole home listings that I had to really compete with. It's not, but like comparative to some other neighborhoods in Chicago, like an area called like Lincoln Park, where the zoo is, and Wrigleyville, where the Cubs stadium is, and other popular neighborhoods. Sometimes it's just like just littered with listings, and it'd be really, that's when you can feel like the competition of like making sure that everything is good, because there's just so many people doing it. And yeah, we actually made a mistake. Oh, well, no, it ended up being a mistake, but then so we ended up taking an apartment in a different neighborhood than what we're used to last autumn, and we took a risk of getting, because it was pretty much a fully furnished unit, because the owner was moving to Australia. So I was like, okay, well, awesome, we can get a unit in a really popular neighborhood. The rent is actually very, very low and fully furnished, so there's almost little to no investment involved aside from just paying rent. So under everything, like normal circumstances of figuring it out, it's like, okay, well, this is going to be great, aside from the fact that we have to sign the lease starting in the low season. And I just didn't realize how bad the low season is in this area compared to where we normally are. And it was really, really bad. And we also made tons of like strategic investments during this time too. So we're kind of getting kind of like in a danger zone of like of our finances. And that's when we learned, it's like, wow, it's our area is so much. So we were lucky. Our area is so much better than what I originally thought of. Like when I first started, because I originally, when I first started, like I thought that our area was gonna be like one of the worst areas in being in the city. And then because like I only saw like our competition being like charging so low compared to like all the other ones are charging so high. And then I realized that it was actually flip-flopped. I kind of don't really envy people being in the really nicer, not nicer, but popular areas that most people would imagine that people would like, because yeah, they really suffer in the low season.
And because you are stationed next to this convention center, you're able to keep your occupancy rate high for the majority of the year.
Yeah, even like December, we were still at like 60 some to 70%. Our worst last year, our worst I mean, rather this year, our worst month was January. January was the only month in which we were actually in which we were in the red, like by like just only a little bit. But every other month, we were still in the black and like net positive. Uh, Even if it was just like a little bit, like a few $1,000s here and there. Uh, but but yeah, so pretty much a lot of times with a lot of people we know too, and things that we can we research, like a lot of times in like December through March, even like some people just don't even have barely any bookings at all, so they're just taking a complete loss during that time. But usually during the summertime, then because usually March through November, we have a pretty long high season, and it's they would make more than enough money to kind of cover and make as much what they would normally make. But
So you're rental arbitraging 3 units now, and you also own another. Are you strategically placing them next to like this convention center? Because
yeah, they are all. Yeah, Chinatown is actually right next in the neighboring area of the convention center, and then so we decided to now pretty much only look for listings in our particular area, just because it's logistically it's much easier that all our listings and areas, so we can get to them really quickly. Uh, and um, and yeah, just the amount of business and traffic that this convention center commands is just amazing, because the area is also one of the like up and coming growing neighborhoods as well. So we get the prices are so much lower than the rest of the city, but on average, we actually command uh, our return is pretty much, I think, definitely the best in the entire city
of Chicago.
Sure, yeah. I like compared to the price with rental arbitrage and property purchasing, and the amount of return that you can get if everything is done properly. I'm almost guaranteed that we're, if not the best, we're in like pretty much the top three areas for sure of on average of getting a return, and the highest money making area for sure in the city.
And you believe that it's a lot of that is because of this convention center?
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, the Chicago Convention Center is I think it's still the largest in the nation. Yeah. So and then not only that, it's there's also, they built a new arena. I think the DePaul built a new arena right next to it, and a lot of events happen there too. And also, we're location wise, we're situated very, very close to downtown as well. So our proximity and the ease of public transportation to get into downtown is very, very easy. And we're also one neighborhood away from the parks, like Millennium Park and Grand Park, where all the festivals happen, like Lollapalooza and everything that happens in the summertime. And very close to the lake. So we actually are in a great kind of perfect storm area where prices are not only quite low in general, but for like getting a place, but also when you want for our nightly average, we're really high. And like the crazy thing is, like, we barely have to try for it too, because the demand is so high, and because of our city ordinances as well, it curbs how many people can actually come in as well. So I will never have really more competition than now, pretty much, which is nice.
Is this specific to Chinatown?
No, it's specific to the city. So Chicago's ordinances for Airbnb are actually quite bad. I don't think it's as bad as New York and LA per se, but like it's up there. So pretty much the short story is, there's limits to what kind of building you can do it. You can do a short-term rental in, and how many as well. So for the most part, what gets most people is that in any given building, a short-term rental can only take up 25% or 6 units, whichever is less. Which for a whole home listing, which means that unless it's your primary residence, and so which means that any building that is 4 units or less cannot do it actually. So a single family home, detached home, 2 flat, 3 flat, a 4 flat, you pretty much cannot do it without some other adjustments that needs to be done. And then because of the 25% rule. And then only until when you get into 8 units could you possibly have 2, because 2 is 25%. And but even if you're in a big building, the most you can do is 6. So whichever is like 25% or 6 units, whichever is less. So even if you're in a big building that allows for it, the most you can have in legally is 6. So pretty much even if like there's like 20 or whatever amount of listings in there and everyone registers, the first 6 people who register, it's first come first serve, will technically, according to their own laws, but I mean the city of Chicago is beyond poor and they don't know how to do anything anyway. So you never know. But like according to what they wrote, only 6 of them. So the first 6 would be able to get their units registered. And so which means that, and also short-term rentals is kind of like a really negative thing with a lot of the buildings. So not only does the city have like their ordinances, but also all the buildings themselves and HOAs and big high-rise apartments, they also put themselves on a ban list as well too, which the city will go through and automatically deny any listings in those buildings eventually. So pretty much there's a huge limit to where you can start a short-term rental, and with actual longevity, like you want to actually do it legally. So which is great for people who are able to find these units and have them legally. But it's really tough for someone to try to come in or just to expand in general. So we're expanding extremely slowly because like we don't even bother doing the cat and mouse game of trying to like skirt the rules, because we've already had some issues in the past, and like and we have a lot of friends who do that too, and it just sounds like a nightmare. So it's really great for us that we have these units, because pretty much legally no one would be able, even like big management names, they wouldn't be able to come in because or expand more than they already have, because they just can't according to the law.
Wow, so you've kind of found a niche in the market where it's when you're able to find these properties, you can almost like monopolize on them, because it's like you just get in there and then you're able to set up your listings, and then nobody else is allowed to technically compete with you because of these rules.
Yeah, pretty much. We found a management company that has a lot of apartment buildings, and that's Airbnb friendly, and so I think we're their favorites. So they always let us know like any listings that come up in buildings that may work, and so we've gotten quite a few things from them, and so we do have a nice setup here and nice connections. But yeah, that's the hard thing about Chicago. It's an amazing market, but yeah, it's being curbed. It's being regulated pretty heavily, which regulation's good, but yeah, like it's kind of stupid how you can't like, if you own a home, you can't, like, they're telling you what you can and cannot do with your own home. So it sucked like if you had like a single detached home, like it's like well, why not rent it out? I was like, oh, no, you can't, even though you own it.
So what has been the most challenging part of starting your short-term rental business?
I think the most challenging thing starting was actually not really. I don't like starting. It wasn't really much. We actually there was no. Both my wife and I were like, let's do this, and then I didn't imagine that she would be really on it. I grew up in kind of like an entrepreneurial family, so it's very very normal for me. But then for her was a little bit different. But then she was just like, yeah, let's do it. Like, I'm serious. Let's do it. So we didn't have a challenge too much on that, like kind of like figuring out just to do it. I think the biggest challenge for us was mentally kind of like being scared what our neighbors would think about it, and not messing up the relationship, but like hopefully like no parties and stuff like that. But really, like for short-term rentals, I think the biggest challenge, if you're doing everything else properly, is the cleaning, making sure that your unit is properly available to get that done, because that's probably the biggest bottleneck and biggest challenge of like pretty much all short-term rental operators, I think. And we found a company that does it pretty well, and it's a pretty good setup right now, and things seems to be going pretty well, I suppose.
And what has been the most challenging part of scaling your business?
I think we're getting to the point where the most challenging part is kind of like how to pretty much kind of delegate some things, because with 5 properties, sometimes we're losing track of who's who, and sometimes the messaging. So which is why we automate everything that we can. So a lot of the like message strings that we do, that's all automated except for the very first one. And the cleaning is all automated. That's kind of sent to our cleaners. And I think scaling is pretty much figuring out how it getting a like just a good team to do it. Because once you get to like maybe like 10 or so, it's going to be kind of difficult to keep track of everything. So we're trying to figure out how to have maybe in the future having someone like hiring someone to be on like kind of like their like hands and feet on the ground, because sometimes we're going to be out of town, because we're looking to expand in another state, and also just like maybe just going out of the country, just having fun and stuff like that. So when we're not here, it's like making sure that there's someone that we can have that can take care of certain things that may come up that needs someone physically there. And so that might be pretty much the challenge of how to get someone on board as well to help you be able to do all these things. Because once you get, even with a channel manager and like some of the things are automated, like you have to make sure that there are some safeguards that you can be able to tackle any sort of challenge that may come up. And then I think that's probably the biggest challenge of having so many units, that you can't be in all places at once and you can't do all things at once. If things go wrong all at the same time, which has happened. Like when we were in Japan, like a lot, like there was a few days where like we've never have had any sort of issues, and all of a sudden these issues that we've never had before all came up for multiple properties, and there was nothing we could do about it because we were in Japan, and we didn't have anyone back at home except for our cleaners. Our cleaners help us a lot because they do spend time sometimes to do some things that we ask them to do. But yeah, I think that's probably the bigger thing, is that if you wanted to kind of like do this remotely and scale, especially like when you're not there, other states and stuff like that, you'll definitely need a team to make sure you can be able to get that done.
And what do you do to set your units apart from everybody else?
We try to just make everything, everything feel good. like a lot of the people, a lot of the listings, like people have like this random thing, like hodgepodge things in there, and then one of the things that is necessary but not as necessary is sometimes I think people go overboard on what's necessary to put in your units, but sometimes people are a little bit too bare. So having like a lot of simply even having some like some what I would imagine just necessities in there, like plates. There's some listings in Chinatown that they don't even have plates, and like they don't have enough towels and stuff like that. And it's just pretty much making your place really comfortable. Like imagining pretty much like you're a hotel and having all the like a lot of the amenities that you would get at a hotel, and being comfortable and being like you're at home is really important. Just having those things could, ironically just set you apart because funny enough, a lot of our competition don't have those things.
So just making sure that you have everything that you would need in like a home, but not going over the top.
Yeah. So I was talking with my mentor one time before. It was like, it's especially if you're in a I guess what I would call like a general unit, like just not like a high end place, but just a place that you're wanting. It's just, I guess, for lack of a better term, it's just generating money and money and money. Is that you like there comes a point where any more added things to it does not give you a better return. So like if I had like adding like a bidet or something like that in your toilets or all these other things, like it's actually it's cool maybe, but it's not going to raise my profits necessarily. So, and it's also like a worrisome, like it could break. So what's really nice to go off of is like you want to go give your guests everything of what they expect and imagine they would have, and just a little bit more, so that you exceed their expectations. But you don't need to go overboard, because after that, like then you're not really getting a return on it, and it's not really necessary to for like the metrics of like getting a 5-star review.
I think that's really wise advice. In real estate, when you're selling property, people are always thinking, oh, I need to fix this, I need to do this, I need to do this. But there comes a point where it's like, hey, if you're just looking to make money off of this property, then just put in what is expected. What's the minimum that people are wanting? Because when you start working on like the fine trim details and stuff like that, if your property isn't located in a area where the fine trim details are really nitpicked and people are really caring about that, then you're wasting your time and money. There's no sense in putting lipstick on a pig if it just doesn't make sense. But if you can just make your unit stand out, have everything that everybody else doesn't have in yours, and just make it, unless your competition is highly luxurious apartments, then you're going to want a highly luxurious apartment. But if yours is just another apartment that is just kind of maintaining that minimum standard, then yeah, don't need to go overboard. I think that's really wise advice from your mentor. Is there any products that you couldn't live without in your rentals that has saved you time and money?
Yeah. I mean, the channel manager, it's kind of we primarily only list on Airbnb, because particularly in our area, like VRBO has barely gotten us anything, and I don't. And this is before they upgraded their platform. So it was like the old one, which sucked, and like it was so bad that I didn't even care to continue with it. But since then they've upgraded. But we never got any. We barely got any bookings from them, and so we just pretty much stick with Airbnb, and we're probably gonna grow and expand on doing direct bookings and kind of growing like our own brand in that sort of way with bookings. But I think having a channel manager to kind of like integrate all that and doing like automated things like your messaging is really useful, so you don't forget to do some things sometimes. So we ended up like figuring out that we send the same messages all the time, and especially to get like proper information and check-in information. That aside from the very first one that they do with inquiries or bookings, like we will always have something more customized, but we still have like a general template we would always send no matter what. But we always want to make it as personalized as possible for the first couple messages. But then like once they actually stay, we send the exact same message. So pretty much automated sending those messages and making sure that everything is okay. And then dynamic pricing for sure, because you're just losing money if you're not doing dynamic pricing. For the most part, I say. And we use, I started out with Beyond Pricing, which is great. But now we use Price Labs because there's a lot more customization in it, and it's also cheaper for the fee structure for us now. And
which channel manager are you using?
Your Porter.
Okay.
That's also because I don't need to do very much, like because I have a channel manager, but I don't have any channels that I actually list on. So I actually primarily just really use it for like some basic things like the automated messaging. Really, that's pretty much it. And Your Porter is extremely cheap. So like it's very, very basic and it's very light. So it does exactly the things that I needed to do. Recently, there's actually a free app that's super, super convenient with my cleaners, and it's called Turnover BNB, and that is it does exactly what you wanted to do, and it does it the way exactly how it should be. So that's very, very convenient.
Why don't you use the Airbnb's cleaning program?
Airbnb?
Yeah. Yeah, now they have it so that you can actually sync up your cleaners.
Their teams. No, the team. So the teams thing on Airbnb is pretty much like I think whoever designed it just completely has a lack of understanding of how to run, like how things run or things are done with the business, because there's almost nothing on the teams tab of the actual site that's actually useful. So we don't even use that at all. And especially the way that like sometimes a lot of bigger like people have a lot of units, like they might have other ways to do it. Like this other app it just does it so much better, which is kind of stupid and a shame because I think everything should be done through or at least it was so much easier. Everything could be just done through Airbnb, but their Airbnb's dynamic pricing is a joke, and their Teams thing doesn't do anything, so that's not really useful.
Okay.
And yeah.
Is there anything that you do that has helped your guests leave positive reviews?
Ask for it. So we set it up right from the beginning. So at the moment they actually book, we just tell them like, hey, I hope we will provide us something like it's pretty much, I forgot how I worded it, but like it's pretty much like I hope we're going to provide a great stay that warrants a 5-star review and stuff like that. So like right from the get-go we set our standards and we set up like just telling people like we're here to give you a 5-star stay, and then stick it that in their mind, and then during like the messaging, like we keep on saying that it's like, hey, like thank you for staying with us. Like we hope you had a great time that warrants a 5-star review and stuff like that. And it's surprising. Like we almost like I think 90% of the time we get reviews, and almost every single one of them is 5 stars. So a lot of times people are afraid to ask for it, but it doesn't. Yeah, just as long as you ask for it properly. Like sometimes you're not just like saying, hey, leave me a 5-star review, but like being like hospitable about it, and just asking for it is just a simple way of actually just getting it. So we don't really have any trouble of having people giving us reviews and 5 stars at it.
Okay. And is there one house rule that has saved you before?
House rule. The only thing is just major thing that we used to worry about is just parties. So a lot of times we create quiet hours, and we also put in our listings to or like in our messages that we have family or friends who are our neighbors and live with us. And we usually like, this is one of the things that I wanted to do in the beginning, is that when we were welcoming guests, it sounded like, hey, you know what, we live in the building. Our family and friends live in the building. So if we're not able to help you in time with something that comes up, we can call on them to help you. So pretty much give it subliminally letting them know that, like, they're like, being watched is not the greatest way to describe it, but like, they're being watched, but like under the guise of being helpful. It's like, hey, you know what? Like, we're gonna help you as much as possible. Like, I'm sorry if we're not able to address something as quickly as possible. We can always get our family members to do it, but then it lets them know that, like, okay, well, if they're planning on something, or even if not, but like they're making them more mindful that not to be like rowdy or anything like that, especially. And that's actually helped us a lot. A couple times. And I think only one time we've ever had a group of guys that were just that were really problematic. But I always add that in, like, my messages, and just in case, like, a certain group that I've, like, if I might have some worry about them, then we'll actually, like, meet them in person and be like, hey, you know what, do the spiel. And I think that's definitely given us peace of mind, but also has definitely done the job in which it was designed to do.
And what would you do differently if you had to start from scratch?
I don't know, actually. I think we're pretty lucky in which, like, the things that we've done, and like the place that we've been in, have all been, like, I couldn't really imagine anything else. If I were to do it again, I mean, I would not have gotten this unit that I didn't end up working really well, but I mean, I couldn't have figured that out prior to that, because we got such a great deal and setup for that. But I don't know. I think I would have. I didn't realize, I guess, in a sense, for me, I think the business is actually very, very easy. It's quite simple. I guess real estate in general, but even short-term rentals, it's actually quite simple too. So I think what I would have wanted to do is actually be more aggressive in finding rentals, because that's so much easier to be scaled, and it doesn't cost nearly as much money too. So I wanted to scale up faster. I would have probably started searching for the rentals a lot sooner and getting on that, because maybe in the time span that we've done recently, if we did that kind of a lot sooner, I mean, we could have maybe had 10 by now or more. And yeah, I would say that that's probably the only thing that I would have done different.
Okay. And if you could give one piece of advice to someone who's trying to start their Airbnb business, what would that be?
Just find someone who knows what they're doing, and learn from it. There's so much information now for, like, a lot of, like, YouTube people do it. The guy my mentor, who is a YouTube person, is a really prominent YouTube person. And I actually, we hosted him, like, we did meetups with him and stuff like that. So we ended up getting, like, a personal relationship with him too, which is great. But finding someone who knows how to do it, like, there's a lot of information to go off of, and just looking at people who do it well, listings that do it well, and just do what they do, and just do it, and literally just do it. There's a lot of apprehension, like, with anyone who starts anything new, especially a business. There's too much just too much, like, thinking that goes wrong and they don't end up doing it. Is like, you have to just, in order to learn it properly, you're gonna have to go through the problems yourself too. So in order to do that, you just have to go for it. So the best advice is, like, learn everything you need to learn. But once you have it, like, the only other thing left is just to pull the trigger.
Great advice. That's what we're always preaching on this podcast. Is you once you kind of know the basics, just do it, and you'll learn as you go on. It's not going to be perfect when you start, but it's we just had someone recite a really awesome quote, being it's harder to get a ship going than it is to turn the rudder. It takes a lot more power to do that. Where do you see short-term rentals in the future?
I see, well, for me personally, like what the direction I want to go is more through experiences. And so I want to create short-term rentals that are like places that, are kind of like aspirational properties that people want to go to have great emotional attachment and great experiences, like things like tree houses or, I think like the greatest value come when people are being able to stay at places that they never imagined that they would be staying at. Especially with like more like this is here to stay. And a lot of big names are starting to get into it, which people are worried about, but I don't really care. It's not, I mean, it's whatever, but like they can only move in a specific way. Whereas like as an individual or as a much smaller organization, you can create something that is extremely unique and make a lot of profit off of it just from creating a much more like cool experience, like things like tree houses or things like that a lot of people don't do essentially, and you can get a lot of return on that.
No, I think you're spot on. I think that the way that Airbnbs can kind of stand out amongst the hotel industry is that unique experience. You're not going to be able to stay in a tent, or you're not going to be able to stay in some really unique, shabby chic or something just creative that generates an emotional response that you could in a hotel. There are some luxury hotels that, beautiful views and stuff like that, but nothing like staying in a tent. It's pretty different.
Yeah, for sure.
And is there any way that anybody can reach you, MiLo, if they have any questions?
Yeah, you can reach me at my email. I'm at milo.byron.chan@gmail, and that's pretty much it. Or you can Facebook me, MiLo Chan. There's not too many out there. It's quite a unique.
Okay, yeah, and I'll include everything in the show notes, how to contact you and everything that we talked about. MiLo, it's just been such a pleasure to speak with you today. I think you're killing it. I wish you the best of luck, and I hope that you're able to keep on succeeding. And I'll talk to you next time, Host Nation. Keep on hosting. Hope you hosts benefited from the show. If you found value, please go on over to iTunes or Stitcher, leave a review, and let us know what you enjoy about the show. If you'd like to talk to the hosts that have been featured in these episodes, as well as the Host Nation, then go on over to our Facebook group, Short-Term Rental Success Secrets. Talk to you hosts in the next episode. Keep on hosting.